What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with a solo and by our standards abbreviated podcast today. Going to be digging into some way too soon 2023 NBA trade deadline predictions. I will cannonball into that in a moment, but please, my usual reminder, my usual plea with all of you, if this is your first time checking us out, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, like, comment to help the algorithm on the video. Join our Discord. The link is in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, download the actual podcast, even if you're using YouTube. Go to Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, whatever you use to listen to podcasts. Download every episode. Help us that way. And then look, if you get us via podcast, which I know most of you probably do anyway, head over to YouTube if you haven't done so already. Like, subscribe, comment, help us with the algorithm. Me and Grant continue to build the community, and follow us on all the socials: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine. At Hardwood Knocks everywhere except for IG, which is at Hardwood_Knocks. I don't know what the hell happened there. Anywho, I wrote about NBA trade deadline predictions very at the start of the season, and I want to see how they aged. And so I will talk about that. But these are also predictions that I think for the most part I will still believe. Some of them though have aged very poorly. But I will say, for anyone who thinks that it's too early for the 2023 NBA trade deadline talk, this is not the main pod. This is not the focus of how we do coverage here. So we're not talking, if people ask questions about trades, we will answer them, but that's not our primary focus. It's also not a problem if podcasts focus on that. Trades are part of the NBA. Also, time has a way of speeding up. Remember how one moment we were in the dead of summer wondering as a family how and why the Denver Nuggets managed to hash out a contract with DeAndre Jordan 2.7 seconds into free agency. Then the next moment, our neighbors are putting up inflatable winter holiday decorations that billow in the wind like Kevin Durant's allegiance to the Brooklyn Nets. The lead up to the trade deadline is going to pass just as quickly. 1 minute, we're all wondering how long the Lauri Markkanen era Utah Jazz dynasty will last. The next, we're going to be glued to Twitter, wondering if a report from the unverified avatarless multiple sources 9 about Luka Doncic growing weary of playing Christian Wood Shadow and requesting a trade is actually true. This is all to say we can talk about the trade deadline in a responsible fashion. I did structure it, for anyone who was wondering, in the interest of maybe potentially possibly actually getting a prediction correct. I decided that consequentially reasonable is going to be the theme here. I want my crystal ball gazing to have a shred of accuracy while also stepping out on some limbs. So let's head to the hall of uninformed prophecies and see what I cooked up a few weeks ago. The action will start earlier than normal is my first prediction. December 15th is deemed the unofficially official start of NBA trade season, since that's when a majority of free agents who sign contracts over the summer can be first dealt. But this demarcation line is beyond arbitrary. The lion's share of free agents from the previous offseason aren't actually jettisoned just because they're eligible. This waiting period is more about teams figuring out what they have and who they are overall, and then letting the buyers and sellers market develop based off those results. That delay won't exist this year. There will be more action in the months leading up to the deadline than we're typically used to seeing, I think. They may not be blockbuster moves, but these moves also won't purely happen because the Los Angeles Lakers are currently imploding. Instead, we should expect prospective sellers to act with more haste, especially those who are too inadvertently good to be deliberately awful. I wrote that I don't think team CEO Danny Ainge will stand for the Jazz being within earshot of 500. That has aged pretty poorly. The Spurs were supposed to be the most organically bad team in the league. They're not going to let their respectable start slide. I don't think that's a team that's going to move, Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, Doug McDermott. Other sellers will also emerge from the woodwork. I think we're going to see Charlotte flirt with this at some point. And there will also just be teams that are looking to outlose franchises and try to deal themselves into top 3 lottery odds. And that could be, there could be some shocking teams there. Like, I do think this is the year that we also see Eric Gordon get moved by Houston. It could be a matter of when, and perhaps that takes longer. But I think some of these calls get made sooner, including a team like Washington, where like they're sort of hovering near the bottom of the league. They just beat the Mavericks though, post recording this. So maybe they're not a team that gets there, but I do think there are candidates to just sort of, there's the usual suspects. Like I said, the Spurs, the Pacers with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield floating around. But I just think that we could see some surprise sort of moves go in that regard. That maybe the Knicks decide to pivot into that sort of structure. So I do still believe that we'll see action sooner rather than later. And look, frankly, I think we should expect to see it from the buyer's market as well. This year's competitive landscape is deep. Want to be contenders who might fall behind the field: Miami, Philly, Minnesota at this point. Or title hopers who are good but not quite finished. Think Phoenix with all the injuries, plus Jay Crowder is not with the team. And Brooklyn, they have to do something. They can't lay in wait for error. There is no margin for it at the top or even inside the middle this year. And so I think teams will pounce on upgrades accordingly. Emphasis on, I think, there. Russell Westbrook will get jettisoned to San Antonio or Indiana. That is not a very spicy take. I think, though, it's aged pretty poorly. I'm not necessarily talking about the Chris Haynes report over at Bleacher Report that said there are teams that are showing interest in Russ since he, excuse me, I was exhausted. Since he moved to the bench, he has been playing really well overall. Most of his looks are coming at the rim. He's just in a more organic role there. I don't believe that there are a ton of teams that are just going to want Russell Westbrook services. The Pacers and the Spurs always loomed as sort of the most likely landing spots. Um, like the Spurs have all this cap space in the world. So if the Lakers want to preserve their financial flexibility moving forward, Josh Richardson's an expiring contract. Jakob Poeltl is an expiring contract. So you can work out a deal for those two. For Russ, the Spurs have the cap space to do that. And then are you sending both picks out? Is that even enough for the Spurs? I think it should be. Is it enough for the Lakers? Get to that in a second. There's also just, you could go the Pacers route and say, well, Miles Turner's a really good fit, helps the defense, which is sort of regressed now that opponents aren't getting as unlucky on their shooting. Allows Anthony Davis to play more power forward, even in closing lineups, because you can use crunch time units that feature those two. And then Buddy Hield's salary. Yeah, he's one of the best pull-up three-point shooters in the game. He looks like he's kind of found the joy again in basketball this year relative to how he finished his time with the Kings. Huge salary for next year. Maybe you can move off of it since it's an expiring contract if you want to prioritize cap space. I will say that why this has aged so poorly is, will the Lakers actually make this trade? We also saw the report. Howard Beck said he talked to executives that had said they believe the Lakers are waiting on like a TBD superstar that's not Kyrie Irving to become available. They're known to covet Bradley Beal, per Chris Haynes. That certainly, Beal's the one that makes sense. He's like the right age bracket, his contract, because he's old enough. He still has over $200 million left on it after this season. It's big enough to be viewed as an albatross. He also has a no trade clause. So if he wants to go to LA, you're Washington, you could accept that package. So that's a team that I guess could sort of come out of the woodwork here. I just don't know, though, if the Lakers are going to be motivated to make a move because they're so bad right now that I don't think any one trade fixes this. They need to simultaneously get better and deepen their roster. A star trade doesn't do that. And even just a straight up rush trade at this point, if you're only getting back like two players, like a Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, or Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, yeah, you're deeper, but how much better are you? You would be so much better with Bradley Beal. I want to make that clear. But like, you're still tethering your livelihood to this 3-star model where, hey, Anthony Davis is playing through back injury and always banged up. LeBron has an adductor injury right now. We don't know how much time he's going to miss. And then Bradley Beal has not been immune to injuries himself. He missed a chunk of last season. So that's the concern there. And I think it's less likely that Russ gets traded now than it was November 1st, let's say. And I don't know how much it ultimately costs to get rid of him. He's playing better now. Again, I still don't think any team that's going to acquire him does so with the intention of keeping him, which is going to drum up the price. Things always come out of left field in this league, but the Lakers have the second worst record in the NBA right now. They might have already fallen too far behind. I just don't think there's a move out there that makes them a contender, which is all to say, I think that this is it might age poorly. But that was my Russell Westbrook to Indiana or San Antonio. I'll stick with it. Next one, these notable stars will get traded. Non-stars, excuse me, will get traded. Harrison Barnes. Oof. Look, you can interpret this as the Kings will cannonball into an impromptu tank if you're feeling spicy. It's more about Barnes being on an expiring contract and Sacramento already having his replacement in Keegan Murray. It's also about that the way Barnes has been playing, if you move him, it's probably anti-tanking. So yeah, I think he's going to get dealt. The Heat are kind of staring right there, and the Kings love shooting, so just go with the Duncan Robinson plus picks package at that point. Are they brazen enough to like do a Kyle Lowry deal there? So that's, one to consider. I also have Jay Crowder on this. He's currently DMP, takes Eric Bledsoe's tweets literally in Phoenix. So, yeah, he's gone. He has to be. The Suns can't afford to just have one of their 6 best players on the payroll and then not on the court, especially when Cam Johnson is recovering from meniscus surgery. Chris Paul's out right now and has not been shooting the ball too well. They've lost a ton of leverage given how he closed the postseason and the fact that, everyone around the league knows what's what now. But his salary can at least be turned into a rotation player, even if it's not a top 6 guy, or folded into a larger deal that upgrades the meat and potatoes of the Suns' rotation. I think Eric Gordon gets moved as well. There was a tweet that Jasmine L. Watkins had the video of him just like staring at a fight between, I don't even remember who it was, but he just looks like I'm too old for this shit right now. He's 33 years old. That may be prohibitive for some, but he still offers outside shooting and rim pressure without nuking your perimeter defense. His contract also comes off the books after this year, unless his team wins the title or he makes an all-star roster, in which either of those scenarios you would gladly pay him. This is my final non-star. I think the Raptors trade Gary Trent Jr. He's a player option for next season. He's going to decline. The Raptors need his shooting, but they also have to start planning around new contracts for Fred VanVleet, who has a player option next summer. Pascal Siakam, he's a free agent in 2024, and he's extension eligible now. OG Anunoby will be extension eligible next summer. And Scotty Barnes' next deal will be here before you know it. Will the Raptors pay what'll probably be $20+ million per year to keep a non-star like Trent? I have my doubts. It'd be different if GTJ provided a little more on-ball creativity in the half court, but he's no table setter. And while moving him may jeopardize their 99th percentile outcome this season, team president Masai Ujiri hasn't assembled a team like someone overly concerned with himself, overly concerned with the present. Toronto is planning for the future around Scotty Barnes. Competing now is sort of this convenient luxury. If push comes to shove, I think they'll take the longer view and move GTJ at the trade deadline. I'll stick with all of those. My next prediction, at least one of Charlotte, Chicago, Sacramento, and Washington sell hard. Interesting. The Kings have perked up since I last wrote this, so that one doesn't look great. Looping in the Kings is weird. It's hard to envision what a sell-off looks like, too. They're not going to, De'Aaron Fox playing out of his mind and Sabonis barring a trade request. Why are you moving either of those guys? Also, Harrison Barnes is currently fueled some of their struggles. Moving Rashawn Holmes feels a little bit immaterial at this point, and it's probably too early for them to sell low on Davion Mitchell. Does someone pony up big-time assets for Kevin Huerter? But why are you moving him? He's played so well for you. So, truthfully, if the Kings 1 year tank it, and they're not at that point yet, I want to make that clear. They're probably just shutting people down rather than moving towards a teardown. The Hornets are a good bet. They were frisky to start the season, have leveled off a little bit. I know Steve Clifford teams tend to overachieve, but they don't have LaMelo back yet. So, by February, if not sooner, is anyone other than LaMelo Ball going to be bolted down on this roster? I guess Nick Richards, with the way that he's playing. A 1 year nosedive almost makes too much sense for this franchise, knowing that LaMelo's extension is looming. I thought about Chicago. They've played better since I predicted this. But they're still fragile. Zach LaVine says his left knee is fine, but he didn't play 5-on-5 over the offseason, and he's been in and out of the lineup for them. That seems not fine. And I guess they can survive choppy availability from him on offense, but they also can't. Their offense has underperformed relative to their defense, which has overperformed. They're not going to have the ball, it sounds like, for at least the entire season. That being said, the Bulls owe their first-round pick to Orlando with extremely loose top 4 protection. Finishing with a bottom 4 record will be, 1, terribly difficult in the eventual tanking climate, and 2, it only gives you a 52.1% chance of keeping that top 4 protected pick. So I don't think they deliberately explore rock bottom. Could I see a scenario, though, where it's if someone's willing to give you value for Vooch, do we look at it now? I just don't think they're going to get to the point, in retrospect, where it's, do we get, if a team comes calling for LaVine, do we just get rid of him? Or even DeMar DeRozan. That was someone that I think a lot of people thought could find his way on the chopping block. They're a tough one. No such limitations exist for the Wizards, though. I think they're the sneaky candidate. They have that 2023 first-round pick obligated to the Knicks, but it's lottery protected, so they can tank their hearts out. It doesn't even have to involve moving Beal. He can't be dealt until January anyway, and he has the no-trade clause. You could shut him down and run this back next year, but the Wizards also have, a number of good middle ground players they can ship out to fire up the gap year tank if that's the route they go. And after Charlotte from this group, they feel like the squad most likely to do so. Don't rule out how were the Wizards supposed to know there would be consequences for their decisions? Trade rumors surrounding Beal either. We've already gotten them with the Lakers, I feel like. So if I had to rank these four teams in likelihood that they will sell, Charlotte 1, Washington 2. Is Chicago more likely than Sacramento? Like, because does Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes count as selling at this point? I'm going to put Sacramento because, like, maybe they just cut ties with Davion Mitchell too. Sacramento and then Chicago last because they're not in a situation. If I had to pick which of these teams are most likely to buy, I'm going to rank Sacramento first, like to just do the inverse. I'll have Washington second, just because, like, if it looks like they can enter the playoff discussion, you might as well roll the dice on their distant first round pick since you know that 2023 would, in fact, go to the Knicks. Then I'm going to put Chicago just because they have the impetus to not the assets, though. I guess if you're really high on Pat Will still, you really do kind of need him, though, looking at the wing rotation. Then Charlotte, they didn't look like they wanted to buy over the summer, so they won't be now. Next prediction. Cleveland and Miami will both trade for a member of their go-to closing lineup. How's that for like specificity? Does anyone like that? Is it just me? I'll stick with this. They both need to iron out a fifth spot in their most important units. Cleveland would be the most likely team to wait. Its core is younger. That core is also ready to win now, though. Dean Wade is a nice find and just sort of everywhere he's supposed to be. But the Cavs need higher end solutions. Playing Caris LeVert at the 3, I think, is going to have its long-term defensive and maybe even offensive limitations now that Darius Garland is ready to rock. Isaac Okoro is just kind of out on Isaac Okoro right now. There's Jetty Osman, but he's more of a 3.5 than a 3 on his best days. Trading Donovan Mitchell did drain Cleveland's draft pick stash, but they're not without assets. They have LeVert's expiring contract, which can be a quality salary anchor if the Cavs don't view him as part of the bigger picture. Osman, $7.4 million is basically expiring. Next year's non-guaranteed for him. Rebuilding team should be willing to take a flyer on Okoro's defense and the idea of his off-ball slashing. So Cleveland may not have the juice to get targets like Gary Trent Jr., but is Harrison Barnes sort of playing his way into their purview? What about Josh Richardson, Joe Harris, Cody Martin once he's trade eligible? Miami, meanwhile, has more flexibility to trade its future first and definitely needs to diversify the front court spot vacated by PJ Tucker. They can use Duncan Robinson's deal, which has 3 years and $57.5 million left on it after this one to bring back sizable money. While a Jay Crowder reunion would be perfect, it probably requires a third team. Phoenix shouldn't be turning Crowder into They'll first have to send out more money to bring back Robinson, I believe. I should probably look at what Robinson is making. He's pretty up there. So you're going to get a pick back from Miami. Like, that's not going to help you now. For the Heat, also, how many picks does it take to get who you're looking for? That Duncan Robinson deal is a net negative. So are you giving up? If you can do one first round pick, okay. But does that get you Kelly Oubre Jr., KJ Martin? Bojan Bogdanovic is still trade eligible. Are you rolling the dice on Harrison Barnes right now? Would the Clippers consider trading Marcus Morris Sr.? Could you get Larry Markkinen from the Jazz? How about that? I don't think the Jazz would trade him, but if they really wanted to tank, if there's Jovic and a first round pick plus Duncan Robinson, or just 2 first round picks and Duncan Robinson for Larry Markkinen, that'd be overkill, I think, for Miami. But like, is that something they consider? The Heat also, just looking at, they can trade up to 3 picks and 3 swaps. They could poke around the star market if Bradley Beal becomes available, and their half-court offense could use the juice. It probably hurts that they can't trade Tyler Hero right now. I mean, they can, but the poison pill makes it really difficult. I think that they could get involved in a Bradley Beal talks, though, and they arguably might need to, unless Kyle Lowry just plays. I mean, he's played better, but like, I think it's very clear what Bam is on the offensive end, which is a really good player who can't necessarily spearhead attacks. So I do think maybe it's not a star, though, but looking at Cleveland and looking at Miami, I think they both need fifth members of their closing units. Because in Cleveland, you have 4: Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. Dean Wade would be my 5th, but I think you can upgrade from that. In Miami, it's Lowry, Hero, Butler, Adebayo are guaranteed. And right now, I think you have to have it be Cody Martin. I think you can definitely get an upgrade. I mean, probably over Kyle Lowry at this point, but in the 4 spot over Cody Martin as well. So yeah, I'll stick with that. This one's my final one. And I guess it's the Brooklyn Nets will trade at least 1 star. I don't even know if I have to justify this at this point. This is a blisteringly hot take if you trust the Brooklyn Nets to enjoy the trials and tribulations of this regular season without any more drama whatsoever. That's to say this is not a blisteringly hot take. The Nets are already struggling. Like they've gotten better since Kyrie was temporarily exiled or whatever, but Ben Simmons still battling injuries, comes back in more of a limited capacity off the bench. There's no offensive aggression there. He's just getting rid of the ball. I mean, even when you look at his assists, like he's just pitching the ball to someone else without ever like, getting past the free throw line, really. He's getting rid of the ball really early in transition, too. That's something I wrote about a while back. They started to use Simmons without a big lineups before he got injured and then came back. You have to keep leaning into those, but I don't know if that's going to be like the cure-all. They are getting cold cocked by some unsustainably volcanic opponent 3-point shooting, but they can't grab a rebound to save their life in a bunch of lineups. And like they're 28th in points allowed per possession still after a made shot, according to Unpredictable. That is not good. Maybe Brooklyn survives all this turmoil. Count on that at your own peril. Kevin Durant already requested a trade over the offseason and then pushed the organization to fire both Sean Marks and Steve Nash. Steve Nash has since been fired. Let's not forget that Kyrie, not only away from the team, already tried to seek a trade himself. As of right now, like according to Sean Marks, he has not had contact with Kyrie Irving. So this is like, look, this team is essentially the "this is fine" meme, but with smoke trickling in under the doorway rather than a raging inferno. The thing is, the raging inferno comes later. At least one of the next net stars will ask for out or be moved in an attempt to start fresh or something. I don't know who to bet on though. I'm just of the mind we could end it here. Too much has already happened for this to play out any other way. Excuse me. At the same time, though, like when you're looking at Brooklyn stars, what is Ben Simmons' value? Probably nil. What is Kyrie Irving? I think he's probably the most likely because LeBron already seems like he's talking himself into Kyrie Irving. I just wouldn't put a trade request past Kevin Durant, nor would it shock me if part of the terms of his return was, hey, we'll give this until January. And if it's not working, we'll send you where you want to go. So that would be something to keep an eye on. Those are my predictions. I'll have new ones, but I wanted to go over and see how those aged. Those didn't age that poorly, I don't think. I mean, some of them are just a little spotty, but I think they were fine overall. My internet connection apparently late at night is just absolutely awful, which is pissing me the hell off. So I'll end it here. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're consuming us. If you stuck with me through the video and the quality was poor, I apologize. Until next time, though, I'll leave you to shout out to the one, the only, the indelible won't be traded because he is quite literally untouchable, Frank Ntilikina.